So to make sure we're recording. Okay, everybody. Well, welcome tonight to the February 2026 Innovation Division and Government Division joint webinar. Tonight we are talking about workload analysis using appreciative inquiry, and you are in for such a treat because the description for this topic is an organization repeatedly scoring workload reasonability as one of the top 5 areas for improvement on the FEVS survey. And they used a very uncommon approach to understanding the reasons for the perception and the goal of identifying ways to reduce workload through, I'm going to let you say that, heijunka technology and improving key processes. So tonight we're going to learn all about this approach. We're going to understand how the vocabulary maps to our outlook, and we're going to discover the art of combining Lean Six Sigma and appreciative inquiry to develop improvement recognitions. And again, you are in for such a treat because Maria, a federal service veteran with over 25 years of experience, she has served a versatile background of organizations: Army, Marine Corps, Smithsonian Institute, the Department of the Army Casualty and Mortuary Affairs Center. Her career has been defined by a passion for continuous process improvement, and she has honed her skills through Lean Six Sigma training programs during her tenure with the Marine Corps. She has a master's degree in organizational development and knowledge management from George Mason University and a Lean Six Sigma black belt certification. So she is a firm believer in the work smarter, not harder philosophy, and she skillfully combines an early adoption of technology with a people-centric approach, recognizing that the key to problem solving lies in working directly with those involved in any process. So please welcome to our virtual stage our stakeholder champion extraordinaire, Miss Maria.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Rhonda. I'm just going to share my content and we'll get rocking and rolling. So, appreciative inquiry was it's kind of a odd methodology coming from a Lean Six Sigma person saying like, hey, I want to do this more touchy-feely way to problem solve. We just happen to have a couple events happen in our organization where we were at an inflection point that felt like you couldn't come in and say, hey, what are your problems and how can we fix them, right? It needed to be a more gentle approach, a more collaborative approach, a more appreciative looking at the positive approach, so that we could kind of get people out of the trauma that had occurred and look at and imagine a future where things could be better in the organization. So we had over just the, we did this in, I think, 2021, 22, 23. We did this in 23. So we had a break in some of our years with the FEVS survey because of COVID and just other weird things. So, but one of the questions that our organization had repeatedly scored poorly on was, my workload is reasonable. I have a reasonable workload. So if you look across all of the entire enterprise of the department that I'm in, 26%, roughly somewhere between 26 and 30% felt that way, whereas in our organization it was closer to 40%. Pretty consistently, people feel negatively about it. And so we wanted to understand, why do people feel this way? and figure out, is there ways we could do some workload leveling? Were there ways we could, was there technology we could use? Were there processes that needed to be improved? And normally when you do appreciative inquiry, it's about visioning for the organization, and like you would come up with your core values and you would use it to develop your mission statement. We already had those things. We didn't need those things. What we needed was for people to imagine what it would look like for their workload to be reasonable. So we still felt applicable, because we were asking them to dream of something that they theoretically had never felt, because we went, back further than 2018, and it's just always been the case that our part of the organization has felt that we are understaffed. So the process for, and there's a couple slides that will specifically talk about the actual appreciative inquiry process. So we had a couple things that we needed to do. We wanted to prepare, establish a team, and then we had to interview people, and then we had to take all of that feedback and organize it. And then we had to ask people, hey, this is what we think it is. What do you think? Does that sound right? And then how soon, like what's the most important thing to fix, and how soon do you reasonably think it can be fixed? That part is. And then we created a big report, which we actually got published in the International Journal for Appreciative Inquiry. If you ever want to read the whole report, feel free to go and look that up. And then we had a town hall, and then we started implementing the changes. So what's appreciative inquiry? So appreciative inquiry really is about affirming what is working well in the organization and how you can build on that to design what the future could look like, right? So normally problem solving, we talk about what's wrong and what's the opportunity and how do we fix it, and root cause analysis and all of those things that we're accustomed to using Lean Six Sigma. This is a little bit different, right? So it's still a 5-step process. So it's its own kind of little mini DMAIC, or its own unique DMAIC sort of thing. We still needed to define what it was we were trying to study. Then we need to figure out what was going well, ask people to dream what that could look like, ask them to help us design what that future would be, and then figure out how to implement it. The underlying point of appreciative inquiry is you focus on what's giving life to the system. When is it the most effective? When can we, how can we find the best in people, in groups, in organizations, etc. So, when we talk about appreciative inquiry versus the traditional problem solving approach, how we look at the problem matters, and how we talk about the problem matters. And so because everybody was already really drained, and not always, was already really drained in the organization, we didn't want to add to that drain. We wanted to figure out, we wanted this to be a way to kind of give people some hope, give people some life, some input. So rather than, grinding through all of the defining the problems and fixing things and so on, we wanted to figure out how to create a better future. So normally when we talk about these things, we talk about, dissatisfaction, we talk about conflict and low morale and stress and low self-esteem or dysfunctional, etc. So we use a lot of really negatively charged words. Whereas when we use appreciative inquiry, we're going to switch to an affirmative vocabulary. So I will actually show you the questions that we ask. So we talk about, happier, really just using happier words, right? Resilience and opportunities, and wisdom and vitality and enthusiasm and innovation and things like that, that make people have a more positive outlook. Really is the whole goal on being specific and I lost the word. Intentional about the words that we're choosing and the questions that we're asking to get to the root of how to solve this problem. Really, the goal is to do it in such a way that they don't realize that they're solving a problem, that they're just kind of dreaming, right? So it's probably, so basically when you look at, when you put problem solving and appreciative inquiry side by side, we talk about in problem solving identifying a need, whereas in appreciative inquiry we value what is. We analyze the causes of the problem in problem solving. We envision what might be in appreciative inquiry. And now we analyze for possible solution, and we dialogue about what should be. And then we action plan and intervene, as opposed to innovating and realizing what will be. And then there comes this whole co-creation of the future. So here's just a side-by-side comparison of what are the two types of questions that you would ask, right, in a traditional problem-solving approach versus appreciative inquiry, right? So instead of asking what's the biggest problem, we ask people to think about what possibilities exist that we haven't thought about yet. And instead of, why am I working in such a troubled organization? What's wrong with us? That sort of thing. What's the smallest change we can make that would have the biggest impact? And then, but instead of, why do we still have those problems? We ask, what solutions would have everybody win? So these are the questions that we asked. And I'll kind of do a well, actually, I'll just pause for like 30 seconds to let you skim it, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it. So in question 1, now we needed to get to some solutions because our management was like, we need to fix why people feel like they're so overworked, because truth be told, we had more people at that time than we'd ever had. So the workload should have felt smaller, right? So my thing was, I wanted to make sure we weren't dealing with a situation where it was, I know people have all heard the story about some, I don't know which hotel chain it was, but they had guests complaining about how slow their elevators were, and they just put a nice piece of artwork in the elevator vestibule, and all of a sudden, none of the complaints about the elevator speed were coming in. So it's kind of like, so is it really a workload problem, or is it just a perception of a workload problem? So we started with storytelling, not problem, storytelling. When is a time that you felt honored or appreciated? And we wanted to get something in the organization that they currently work in, the organization that we currently work in, but we asked them if they couldn't think of one of that, they could go back to a previous organization. If there wasn't one, if they'd only had negative experiences, maybe in our organization, tell us about another place you were and what that was like. And then tell us about something a colleague that did that was exemplary. People had no problem telling excellent stories about their coworkers and their colleagues and what they had done and great things they had done. Everybody likes their coworkers, just like everybody hates Congress but likes their congressperson, right? So it was a case of, nobody talked about slacker employees that weren't working. Nobody talked about people not pulling their weight. None of those stories came up when we did this storytelling, which was really unique because based on people complaining about workload, I did expect to hear some of that. I did expect to hear some complaining about that. So we talked about, acknowledge the fact that like we have had low favorability about workload reasonability. Tell me a time when your workload has felt reasonable. And really the first 2 questions are just preparatory questions to kind of cue people in on, hey, we're not doing the usual Lean Six Sigma project here. We're not doing the usual problem solving methodology. This is a little bit different. This is going to be like a softer, smushier, more, I don't know, appreciative, but that's reading the title because nobody knew what appreciative inquiry was, and they really didn't care too much what appreciative inquiry was. They wanted to solve the workload reasonability problem. So, and then we asked them, tell us about the future. How could you contribute to whatever future vision you have of this organization? What are you willing to do to make that happen? And then we asked them, this question was just a follow-up for us to know what processes we need to actually dig in and do some leaning or some theory of constraints work or whatever it is. That was just a placeholder for us to build our project list for the next year. So we asked them that as well. And people had a lot to say about processes. And interestingly enough, I think either 1 or 2 years later after we did this, a question came on to the federal employee viewpoint survey that said, tell us about your processes. Are they effective in supporting getting your work done? So I thought, oh, that's interesting, because it was a we didn't do good in that one either, by the way. So we had a really nice sample. We had ultimately, I think we ended up with like 64 out of close to 100 participants, which was a really good participation rate. And we got a really nice sample from the different levels, right? As far as a director level, a supervisor, and then just a staff member who isn't a supervisor. So we had a really good sample size, I think, from our population and the organization. I felt good about that. So we asked all of those, 64 people, those 5 questions, and we developed these themes. So, and we ended up with, I think, 424 424 unique data points. So this was like how did we then take those stories and create anything actionable or measurable or data points? So we actually combed through them, and we actually used Stormboard because I'm here in Albany, Oregon, and my partner that was working on this with me, Shane, is in Pittsburgh. So we needed a way to work on it virtually. So Stormboard's like a virtual sticky note kind of functionality. So we did that. We created our Stormboard, and then we started saying, well, like we had all of these things, we just summarized each statement that we had, or, multiple statements into, a sentence or two, and we broke those out. We ended up with our over 400 data points. And then we started to look at, okay, what are some common themes that we're seeing? And so the biggest one that we had was workload resources, and then communication and prioritization processes were right up there, and work-life balance, which I think a lot of people experienced during and after COVID. This was kind of right at the tail end of coming out of COVID. People were just starting to come into the office. It was before it was mandatory to be back in the office. And so yeah. So, and then, some people just were like straight up, my workload is unreasonable. And that really, so we had to do some more digging and, dig into some more things like that. But those were our common themes. That was too much to try to figure out, because you can't, like, how are you gonna attack all of that? There's no way, right? That's way too much. So we took those common themes, and that's what you just saw, our common themes. And then we consolidated them into 3 to 5 core. So this is what you do in step 2 of appreciative inquiries. You discover the core values. So we consolidated all of those common themes into these 3 to 5 core values. We couldn't get it down to 5. I think we ended up with something like 12, maybe. Normally this is done in person, right? So consolidate into 3 to 5 core values, and then you take all of those themes that we had and you put them into core values, and then condense it down to 3, no more than 5, and then get the main themes from the stories that support the core values. So we came up with our core values, and that we ended up with this like 7 or so. And I'm not gonna, those were just acronyms for me to get them to fit on the page. And I'm gonna go into more detail on that here shortly. So then the statements, so then step 3 is creating your possibility propositions. So this is when you create these future present scenarios. This is when you go back to people and you say, okay, what does it look like then? How do you stretch beyond where you're at to create possibilities and build on the strengths that we have and what our core values are? So, this is what I always like to say is dreaming is free. Like, it doesn't cost you anything to say what you think would be great, right? And some like people really were feeling the strain of not having enough time in the day to get their work done. They're, losing sleep over it. They were feeling like nobody was on the same sheet of music. They didn't have time to support their staff. Supervisors felt like they didn't have time to support their staff. The staff didn't feel like they had clear guidance. They couldn't get their work done. They didn't know what the priorities were. So, I said, hey, treatment's free. If you could have anything you want, what does it look like? And then then we went back on step 4, you build the consensus, right? Here's what our results were. This is what we think we need to do. Here's the possibilities that you came up with for what the future could look like. Do you agree that this is what we can do? And then we need you to prioritize them. The whole point being that the same people that we interviewed at the beginning got to prioritize the recommendations that we made to management at the end. So we took all of those 424 individual data points, put them into those categories, and then we came up with these 3 to 5 themes, right? And then we have to ask folks, so then we have these possibility propositions, right? Of like, I wake up without my mind racing, right? How much of an ideal is it? And then how much of it is already present? And then how soon do you want it to happen? So that was our last step with the interview participants, with those 64 people. These are, by the way, are the those abbreviations that I said, okay, I'll tell you those abbreviations later. So what we came up with, the things that were the most important to everybody were prioritization. So what you have in orange is the ideal and the blue is current, right? So back to that valencing, how much of it is current, how much of it is an ideal is it, how much of it is it currently in the organization, right? So we said, ideally, how much do you think prioritization is important? 5. But it was like people were pretty resounding that these were the most important things the most important 5 things that they wanted to be addressed, that they wanted to see and create a different future for. So prioritization, communication. So that's improving communication up, down, across the whole organization. Having work-life balance and creative time. We lump those together because those kind of were both about time, right? And so that was just about like how to get more time to do important work. Now with AI, a lot of this stuff, like since we did this, AI has come out, and Energy has its own AI solutions and stuff. So a lot of this stuff is really getting better for people that are adopting the technology. So, and then modernization and processes. So using new technology or modernizing technology that we're currently working that feels a little ham-fisted and cobbled together, and then streamlining processes. And then the last one, reasonable workload and workload resources. So, literally having a reasonable amount of work assigned to you, and then having the resources that you need to do it. Do you have the money? Do you have the tools to do the people do the work that you need to do? So here we came up with 18 recommendations. We took all 18 of them to management and said, there's 18 here, but a lot of them are simple. Just do it now and call it done, and change how we function today. So we came up with these 18 recommendations. I think 6 were selected for implementation. We never did do a formalized staffing analysis. The expectation was that management would do that with their employees. OPM was willing to come in and help us do that, but we didn't want to, I think, highlight the problem to that level. So we said management or managers, if talk to your employees, and if they feel their workload is overwhelming, you need to actually look at the work people are doing, figure out what doesn't need to be done, etc. Reassign whatever. Another one was streamlining and improving the time to hire process and establishing a benchmark to reach it. adopting the 1/3, 2/3 planning rule and prioritizing every task based on its importance and conveying the consequences of not getting it done. Right. So the 1/3, 2/3 planning rule is a military term. A lot of people know about it though. So it's basically if I'm a manager and I have 3/3 of the time to get something done, I'm only going to keep 1/3 of it figuring out who's going to do the work and if I have any special guidance from them, and I'm giving the person who has to do the work the lion's share of the time to actually get the work done. That seems like an easy enough thing to do. That's a simple math thing that people could do. We recommended creating leader standard work templates that would help everybody know what were the key things that needed to be done and when they needed to be checked on, whether it was weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever. Get comfortable. We wanted people to document all their work processes. Do it. I wanted to do a process inventory. I wanted to bring in a consultant to do a process inventory because our organization is really large and it's like me and one other dude in the continuous improvement organization. So I wanted to bring somebody in to help document all of the processes because many of them were not. They're just what people know, rote memory, and you know how that happens when work changes and etc. And then I wanted people to really start getting comfortable questioning all of their processes and always thinking about how to lean them, right? And then I wanted us to work with the GSA RPA team to create our own RPA team within our organization, the operations center, and identify what processes, based on that inventory, what processes can we automate? And then a mentorship program was the next thing, and we actually did implement that one. We did implement a mentorship program, so that's good, and that's I think working pretty well across the organization using Viva Insights. So it was a tool within Microsoft that we had available, and most people didn't know that it could be used to evaluate your scheduled collaboration time, and you could create focus time, etc. So and there's actually a roll up for managers too. This is like a slight upgrade to that software. We could have got. We taught people how to use the Viva Insights. We did do that. We had a webinar on how to use Viva Insights, show people where it was, how to use it, etc. So that was good. And then teaching staff how to maximize the tools at their disposal. That has been an ongoing thing for years now, where we have webinars on, all the different things, Teams and OneNote and Planner and all the different things that are there. So that also is happening. Assigning clear due dates. It seemed like it's easy enough, just do it. We didn't select that one for implementation. Sharing consequences for successes or failure. That's kind of a repetition of the 1/3, 2/3 planning rule, in all honesty. Communicate changing priorities. Something that happens is that, this is a communication thing, right? Like, this is hot, this is important, we got to do it yesterday, we got to do it 3 weeks ago. And that's part of that 1/3, 2/3 also. But then, that good idea fairy flies away and somebody comes back and tells that person who assigned that work, oh, I don't need that anymore, but I'm still over here scurrying, trying to pull this thing together, right? So communicating, hey, that priority's changed, take that off your plate, right? This is an easy way to figure out how to get more time back in your day, or how to manage your employees' workload, is just let them know they don't need to do that thing that they were working on that was such a high priority. And then encouraging employees to let their supervisor know. That was kind of about psychological safety. Hey, I don't have enough information to do this, or I don't have enough time to do this. I can't get this done by then. Teaching employees to ask, hey, is there anything, what do you need from me today? Right? Talk to your boss early in the morning. What do you need me to do today? And then we recommended, and it was creating and publicizing an open door policy was selected for implementation, but we didn't implement. It was just one that was selected and didn't get done. And then we have some people who are kind of like, they work in multiple places, so they're getting supervision from different locations, and sometimes it's hard to deconflict. So, we said there's got to be some more crosstalk, more communication about providing that clear guidance. And then establishing clear standards about what is okay for a federal employee versus a contractor, and to make sure that people know they're not, violating, bounds of contracts, et cetera. So those are the recommendations that we came up with. We, so yeah, so that's it. And so like this, I put this slide deck together a while ago, that this was in progress. I would say at this point, what has happened is what is going to happen, which is, if I go back up to the recommendations, the Viva Insights, the training, the mentorship, um, those three things I think are in place and happening. Um, and that's pretty much the extent of these 18 things that were actually fully implemented. Now, some supervisors might have taken some of these 18 other 15 recommendations and started doing them, but it wasn't like as an organizational effort. At this point, we did this study in, I want to say 2023. So, how much has changed since 2023? We're not even in the same universe as we were in 2023. So anything that wasn't done now is just, that's not happening. Not that it can't, like, I never lose sight of this. We got 18 recommendations out there. I have a tracker that I keep of, recommendations that were made and never implemented or whatever. So there are always things that we can come back to. So then, step 5 is you co-create that, like you create your destiny, right? That's it. That's my prepared remarks. I'm ready for questions.
Well, this is fantastic. Thank you so very much, Maria. We so appreciate your explaining both the methodology, your approach, what the opportunity space was when you first undertook it, and really the learnings that you could take and apply. And I think our listeners tonight too. So we'll start out with the first. Well, first, let me get over here. Folks, if you have questions for Maria, please put them in the chat so we can see them, see what's coming in. Okay, so we'll start out. I know you mentioned, from problem to opportunity space, but let's talk about like the appreciative inquiry foundations, Maria. How does appreciative inquiry shift the conversation from what's broken, right, which is typically where we're at, to what's working? And why does taking that approach work so well for your organization leaders and the improvement effort overall?
Right. So the difference is really, Rhonda, in the language that we use. We had some pretty traumatic events, and the last thing that Shane and I wanted to do was further traumatize people, because they just weren't in a space to trust. There was not a lot of trust in the organization. They weren't in a space to trust, how they weren't in a space to trust that I'm going to put in the effort to solve a problem and management's going to do something about it, because they'd had too much, there was too much evidence to the contrary up to that point. So really that framing of the using the language, that slide I showed with how the vocabularies color our outlook. And then you see it in the framing of the questions, right? When we sit down and talk to people about a process we want to improve, we ask about like, what's not working? Where is it stopping? What's broken, right? Like and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a perfectly acceptable way to approach problem solving. But it just in our instance, where we were at, I wanted to flex this muscle that I had. I learned this methodology at George Mason, and we actually had to go as consultants and do appreciative inquiry and do like a whole visioning and core values thing with, I think we did Girl Scouts of the nation's capital. I see you, Chris. I got you. Just one sec. Um, so, so like we had done it. I had done it with a group, maybe like 5 or 6 in my cohort, and we had done all of that through interviews and et cetera, and that was great. We hadn't, what we hadn't, what we hadn't done was like I had never led one on my own, so I was like, I need to do this. It's a thing that I have. It's a skill that I have. So I definitely wanted to try it out, and I thought it fit specifically in this organization at that time. I would use it anytime I was in an organization that needed to figure out their core values. Like if you're doing it, like you're like whatever, got new management and you want to figure out mission, vision, values, that kind of stuff, I would use appreciative inquiry absolutely for that. I would also use it, and I think Michael, I can't remember, Michael Hart's on. He was at the appreciative inquiry presentation with the Montreal ASQ division earlier this month. When you want to do CPI, continuous process improvement, or you want to do a Lean Six Sigma project in an organization where it has left a bad taste in their mouth, it's helpful to get them to think about positive things that have happened from improvements that they've participated in or that they've benefited from in the past. So I would say to Chris, to your question, it is another methodology in my toolkit. I wouldn't transition solely to appreciative inquiry, but it does help to frame, even when I'm using traditional problem-solving methodology, if I'm just doing a Lean Six Sigma project, to have some of that affirmative vocabulary in my mind. So when things start to spiral down the doom path into the doom pit, I can kind of redirect us to say, well, it can't be all bad. What's working well? What do you want to keep out of this process? Things like that. So yeah, I'd never throw away my Pareto charts for appreciative inquiry, but it's another, yeah, it's another thing to help to sort of framing, and to do more of an attitude adjustment, maybe, like, for lack of a better term, like how do you adjust people's outlooks on the thing you're about to embark on? Yeah.
Well, there's a lot there, right? I mean, really, what I hear you're saying is you're really, instead of deep diving and excavating, right, you're really inviting the organization to rethink who they are through this, collaborative peopling effort, and this process through the utilization of appreciative inquiry helps to rebuild trust and rebuild connection points. I think that's very, very powerful. Thank you, Maria, for sharing that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where do I know you talked about blending appreciative inquiry with Lean Six Sigma and the opportunities. If could you touch upon this blending effort? I know you answered that from Chris a little bit too, but what do you see work the best, or that the workforce and the leadership really positively respond to when you're blending this improvement efforts?
So I've only done it this one time in my organization, and everybody was on board because I said we had, some stuff happening. I would say that I would probably use it moving forward, embarking on probably on any project that I start moving forward. And that's based on the one that I watched earlier in the month. I haven't used it very much, and I realized that I've been missing an opportunity of, doing, at that kickoff meeting, doing a visioning and a kind of establishing our values as a team and how we're going to approach solving the problem. Um, my organization specifically loves the affirmative vocabulary. They don't really even like us to say that we have a problem statement. It's an opportunity. Um, so, um, so the affirmative vocabulary is very helpful for me to switch. Now, what I told people, no, I'll answer your questions, Chris. It's good. It's good. We got 2 questions in the chat till 2 round. Um, um, I, so I'll use it that way moving forward based on having seen how the gentleman that presented earlier in the month um, how he used it to get people to think better about Lean Six Sigma or continuous process improvement. People have a real effort or like a real opinion about Lean Six Sigma, especially in government, right? Like, oh, we don't make widgets, so we don't need to. Well, I just bought like 15 copies of We Don't Make Widgets, and the subtitle is it's by Matt Miller, maybe. And the subtitle is Reasons That Government Fails to Radically Improve, right? Because we do make widgets and we don't even realize what our widgets are and what our factories are and etc. Um, so anyways, I digress. People have opinions about it. Like, we're rebranding our continuous process improvement working group to the process excellence team. Okay, but we're still going to do the same work. We're still going to train people on DMAIC and Lean and theory of constraints. Like, we're still going to give people a common operating definition of what problem solving looks like, so that when you take people from different parts of the organization, everybody's speaking the same language when it's time to come up with solutions for their pain points, right? But if I'm really, digging more into my appreciative inquiry experience, I'm going to find better words than pain points, right? So, yeah, I think it's, so how to bring it into Lean Six Sigma, I would say, is I would start moving forward every project with a little mini appreciative inquiry exercise, just a day, one meeting. We're going to talk about our experiences, tell good stories or that we've experienced, and create some excitement around what we're about to embark on, and some, like excitement and some hope and, things that give life to the organization, because that's the goal of appreciative inquiry, is to capitalize on the things that give life to the organization to further breathe more life into the organization. Did I answer that, Rhonda? Did I answer that question?
Yeah, I love it. So what I hear you saying is the choice of a language and the choice of utilization of this method really helps you reset and revamp and restart, drive your energy up, drive your momentum, and then that opens up their minds and the aperture to introduction of kind of more typical continuous improvement efforts, right? But blending the two might get you, help you amplify the excellence outcomes that you're focused on. That's what I guess I took away from that, Maria.
Yeah, and in the paper, in the really long paper that we wrote, we actually had a lot of data, and analysis of the data, and what that meant, and etc. So we did pull a lot of our Lean Six Sigma skills into the bigger report.
Well, we'd love it. I don't know if that's something that's, shareable, outside of your agency, or if that's, something we could showcase, right, how you're blending these methodologies. We'd be happy to tell that story, Maria, if you would.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll find the article, and I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
The link to the article if I can. Yeah.
Right, always
Okay.
bringing it to life, right? That's
Yeah.
people love that. Thank you, Maria.
Yeah. So Michael asked whether we had any aha moments when going through this. So I did have some aha moments. And I know I made some people upset because when I asked them, about processes, they, don't have processes documented. And quite a few people are like, we just need more people, we just need more people. And my viewpoint has been and continues to be, and I told them this, like, I'm not gonna just go recommend to management that you need more people if you have a process that is just a meat grinder and you want me to just give you more flesh for the meat grinder so you can spit out some more disgruntled employees on the other end of your process. Until you document your process and eliminate waste, I'm not recommending more people. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to recommend getting rid of people, but I'm certainly not going to recommend, because you don't even know how long your process takes. So no, I'm not doing that. We're not going there. And people weren't really happy about that. Because they had in their mind that they just knew they needed more people, and the people that were saying it the most was an organization that had doubled in size, and their processes hadn't gotten any easier as an internal customer to deal with. So yeah, my aha moment was that everybody thinks that they have too much work, but what they have is undefined processes that are full of waste. It wasn't really an aha moment. The aha moment, I guess, in that, Michael, was, um, wow, people really don't understand the importance of documenting their process and analyzing it for waste. Like, they just really don't get it. That surprised me. I didn't realize how few people thought like I did. That's your first step. What am I doing, and why does it suck so bad? Why did nobody want to deal with this? Right?
Well, it's very
Um,
interesting you're saying this, right? And it's very interesting that you're experiencing that. And you know, that took a lot of courage for you to say, hey, before we go to this default option, there has to be some level of desire to move up that maturity chain, right? And that's about at least acknowledging, right? Acknowledging the benefits that this would bring to your organization, baselining something so we have something to work for, so we can provide justification, and then really helping them continue up that improvement arc.
mhm. Yeah. Another aha moment was there were some people that just didn't feel like their workload was fine. They felt like they were not overloaded at all. And I was like, so what was that? Was that because their supervisor's not giving them enough work? Or is it because they'd figured out how to work more efficiently? Or maybe they just didn't feel stressed about it. Maybe they felt like, oh, just get what I can get done. And so, I mean, uh, it was the to me it was our processes needed a lot of work, was what I came away from it.
And it sounds like culture, right? I mean, it sounds like what you're explaining is a lot of cultural differences based upon these, organizational segments, which probably everyone online has experienced, right? It's not
Right.
necessarily uniform levels of, awareness, engagement,
Mhm.
activation, maturity. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've had to kind of do some, like gorilla, GUE gorilla, not GOR gorilla. Sort of like some gorilla CPI work, because there's been, this, well, we're the government, we don't make things, so we don't need to do Lean Six Sigma. Or, I mean, I luckily, just by my boss's, like, pure determination, I was able to offer, I want to say, like 3 or 4 greenbelt classes, and we certified 8 people their greenbelts. So, um, but and that was after this. But you ask people to map their processes, and they do a SIPOC. Give me a high level process map. They can't. They don't like. And I don't expect them to do necessarily be able to. But when you show it to them, they start to really see things differently.
Exactly, right? Because it brings clarity, and it shows where there's ambiguity and inconsistencies, and where there's opportunities, right, for improvement. Yes, and or sometimes, right, it helps them move to that place of at least communication so that they could get to eventual collaboration, which maybe they could then move even to co-creation, right, of what that next stage looks
Right.
like.
Right, exactly. That whole co-creation is really is the goal of appreciative inquiry, right? Everybody's involved in creating this ideal future. And I mean, maybe you never get to your ideal future, just like you never get to your ideal state process map, right? But hey, you aim for the moon and you land among the stars. And you have to set your goals high. You have to set some lofty goals if you want to achieve excellence or get anywhere close to it. So
And I think you spoke also to the benefit, right, about bringing the people along, giving them some seminal challenge, if you will, right, to really cut their teeth on as they're moving through this Six Sigma journey. So I love that.
yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we talk about all the time, right, in whether it's in a process improvement or change management effort or whatever, is getting buy-in, buy-in, buy-in. Well, what I learned when I was at George Mason is if you involve people up front to create the future that you're aiming for, the improvement that you want to make, you don't have to get buy-in. You got their buy-in from the get-go. They helped create the future. They're already bought in. They're
Exactly.
already invested.
Exactly, right. And I think that goes to the power of this, right? Because when you don't move them to a place of resistance, i.e., problems and challenges and excavation, but rather what is the unoptimized opportunity space, right? You just you shift them from resistance to interest, hopefully, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Um,
Christine.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, Chris asked about a facilitator class, and I'm not sure what that means, Chris, if you want to add some more information about if I was able to get a facilitator class, and I can answer that. And then Christina asked, what would have helped you when you started this? In other words, what would you recommend to someone doing this for the first time? Well, one, you should read, there's a really teeny tiny book on appreciative inquiry, and you should read it. David Cooper Ryder at Case Western University is kind of like the godfather of appreciative inquiry. I did some really cool stuff at Mason, like we did an open space technology, which is another visioning thing, and it's the most non-technological thing that you could ever do, where you have a question that you want to figure, like a theme, a question you want to answer at the end of the day, and you show up without an agenda, and you co-create the agenda for the day, and it's an all-day learning event, right? So you co-create the agenda for the day, and while you're there together, the things you want to talk about, and then you set up rooms and people move from room to room to talk about the things that matter most to them and how they want to fix it and what problems they want to address, what opportunities they want to engage in. So it's just some really neat stuff. So sure, yeah. So that's the first thing I would recommend, Christina, is to look at that book. It's a really teeny, it's like not even a full-size book, and it's thin. I don't have it at my fingertips. I have it somewhere dog-eared because I used it when we did this project. And yeah, I would look for examples of other organizations, and oh, you don't have practice. Oh, okay, great. Oh, so yeah, I guess find somebody who's really really suffering and try to help them. I don't know. Yeah. So I didn't even know there was I didn't know being a facilitator was a thing you could do. That might be something I want to look into. Thanks for that tidbit. But yeah, but love to see the book. Yeah. So yeah, I would um I would and I'll send a link for the book to Rhonda so you can send it as a follow-up too. Yeah, I would recommend. So how do you get practice? You could probably find organizations that, oh, sweet. Thank you, Christina. You could probably find organizations that needed this and offer your services free of charge to build some case studies, maybe. I don't know. And get word of mouth, and then you could offer it as a fee for service. But I mean, for us, I mean, I'll do it for free for anybody because to me, like if you're willing to, like if you're a federal agency and you're willing to pay for my travel, I'll go train you. I'll go do an appreciative inquiry event for you. No problem.
I
So,
love it. Here we go. We'll just put Maria on a visit schedule for all the people on the line tonight.
right, right.
Yeah, I think Christina had maybe this is the last little part, Maria. I think we have enough time for this one. It says she also has this thing. Can you speak a little bit about this focus on culture and this building out of social capital that happens from this blended approach?
Yeah, so right, because we don't really talk about culture so much in in CPI, right? We're really process focused, process oriented, but culture is the biggest thing that we run up against, right? So everybody thinks that if you lean your process and you get whatever new technology is out there to make the work easier, that it's going to be solved, but it's never that easy. You have to do some cultural change. So then that comes into like change management and how do you address it? And so, yeah, I think that the way this helps the social capital is that people, it's the getting that buy-in up front, right? You're creating buy-in, you're not getting buy-in, right? You're building it. And so I know social capital is part of the terminology and appreciative inquiry. So, but it's that building the future together. It's that, I'm a part of this thing. My voice is heard and I'm going to have a say in the outcome. And so people wanted to participate. People really wanted to participate in this project. I was really surprised at how many people agreed to interview. It was just me and one other guy. We had to interview the whole 64 folks.
Well, that's it. Thank you so much. So let's give a big round of applause to our guest speaker, Maria, and thank you so much for giving us new tools in our toolkit and this new approaches and resources that we can take back and share with our leadership and our teams to see how this can work for them. So again, thank you so much for joining us on our February 2026 joint ASQ Innovation and Government Division session tonight. We welcome you on behalf of Miss Jackie Dolly and Miss Shruti Patel and their teams to join us in our future events, which I'll show you in a moment. If you're not already familiar with our ASQ Raised to the Power of Excellence, they have an Insights on Excellence program that really talks about innovation and government and their global studies and some very interesting modernization and transformation initiatives they have worked with our corporate clients around the world on. So please, when I send the deck, please feel free to peruse that research. If you are not a member of ASQ or ASQE, we invite you to join. And then our look ahead for innovation for March through September is in front of you. You'll get this deck, but we are inviting you to examine as we explore innovation in the digital ecosystem, looking at how innovation, AI, and the future of leadership intersect. Joining us at ASQ's WCQI conference in Orlando, Florida, and looking at real world AI ML case studies from across industry and life science. That's the early part of the year. And then going over to our wonderful government division, where we'll be bringing you a look at predicting what matters using the service value chain to strengthen organizations, and then exploring a deep dive with regard to how we can flip the script from risk mitigation and compliance being constraining to how that opens the aperture for innovation and capability building. And then, of course, we have our EDGE partnership looking at the establishment and evolution of a 10-year environmental quality. If you're going to be at WCQI, you can find Innovation Division and Government Division and our EDGE partners at our showcase stages and the leaders presenting throughout the conference. So again, on behalf of ASQ Innovation Division and Government Division and our wonderful guest speaker, Maria, we welcome you, or we thank you for your attention tonight, and we invite you back in March, where again, we'll discuss innovation in the digital ecosystem and predicting what matters. Have a wonderful rest of your week, everyone. Be safe, be healthy, and thank you again for joining us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you very soon again.